Hey there, guys. All right, today we are watching a new channel, or well, a channel I have not watched yet on this. I've not reacted to yet. Alt Shift X. Rhaegar, was Jon's father the true hero of Game of Thrones? Answer no. I'll get into my reasons as to why, and my perspective on this after the little bits here. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I'd love to join the Discord. Follow me over on Twitch, and please do go check out the two gaming channels here on YouTube. One is for edited gaming content, and then the other is for the stream pods. Okay, good, cool. Now, let's answer this question here. Was Jon's father the true hero of Game of Thrones? No, because the themes of the books do not align with Rhaegar being the hero. I still kind of lean towards Jon being the protagonist because I do really love the idea that Martin is so known for twisting and shifting the perspective on so many traditional tropes of the fantasy genre that then his greatest twist is the fact that he did not twist the hero's journey of Jon Snow, and that Jon is just simply the protagonist of the entire series. It would both be kind of funny to me, but it would also be oddly very poetic for the themes of A Song of Ice and Fire. Now, of course, I'm speaking of this as though I'm assuming Alt Shift X is not going to be just talking about the evidence from the show, but also just the book. I hope. Yeah, it looks like we'll be talking about this is about the book and not the show. So that's my perspective really on it. And then also Rhaegar can't be because no one's rewarded in A Song of Ice and Fire by trying to purposefully enact prophecy. All the people that try and you know do prophecy, they meet grisly deaths and they're not really the heroes. Also, Rhaegar was like 23 or more, and he boned a 16-year-old girl. That's really fucking weird, dude. That's not cool. That's creepy. Rhaegar's a creep. I don't care if he was pretty. He's a creep. So anyways, go ahead and dive in, I guess.
Game of Thrones Season 7 finally confirmed one of the biggest secrets in the series. The father of Jon Snow is Rhaegar Targaryen.
I personally believe that in the books it's pretty much all but confirmed, especially with like, you know, Bran's visions where he is at the Tower of Joy, where he does witness the death his father, and what was that one dude's name from the swamp? Oh, I forget his name. I'm forgetting his name. But anyway, only two Northerners lived. And Jon Snow. But like, the people talking about how potentially Ned Stark slept with Ashara Dane, right? He was found in the and then, Rhaegar Targaryen was also like, you know, anyways, all the evidence points to it.
Rhaegar died some 15 years before the main story, but he's an important and mysterious character connected to prophecy and political plots, with complex relationships with Lyanna Stark and Elia Martell. Rhaegar's actions shape the course of the story, with the fall of House Targaryen.
I love how old this video is, a 6-7-year-old video. We still have the question marks, George. We still have the question.
With the fall of House Targaryen in Robert's Rebellion and the birth of Jon Snow, to the fate of Westeros in its fight against darkness. So let's work out who Rhaegar was and what he means for the future of thrones. Before Tommen and Joffrey and Robert, the king of Westeros was Aerys Targaryen. Prince Rhaegar was Aerys' son and heir, and he was the brother of Daenerys and Viserys. Rhaegar was married to Elia Martell, the sister of Oberyn and Doran, and they had 2 young children, Rhaenys and Aegon. But one day, at a tournament at Harrenhal, Rhaegar passed over his wife Elia and crowned Lyanna Stark, the sister of Ned Stark, as Rhaegar's Queen of Love and Beauty, when Lyanna was promised to marry Robert Baratheon. So the Baratheons, Starks...
Hold up. I'm getting confused here on how we're... Wait, yeah, is that supposed to be Bobby B? That can't be Bobby B. I know he's wearing the colors of Bobby B, but it don't look like Bobby B. Now, of course, this does make sense for this to be like, this could be Ned. But is that Bobby B? I think this one's Elia Martell. Or I guess that could be Elia. Is that Brandon? And is that... No. That has to be Ned, Lyanna, Brandon? And then is that Rickon Stark? Not Rickon. What the fuck was Ned Stark's dad's name? I kind of picture... whenever I've seen this image, I've always pictured this as... even though those two do look exactly the same. I guess it doesn't really quite make much sense what I always kind of pictured. But I always pictured that as Ned, because he first looks to Lyanna, right? And then I've always pictured this as Bobby B, because he's not focused actually on Lyanna. He's focused instead on Rhaegar, which, lines up. But, like, obviously, color-wise, color schemes, makes sense for this to be Bobby B. But also, like, that face, that looks like a much, much older man than Ned Stark here, when these guys are supposed to be what? I think Ned and Bobby B at the time of this tourney are supposed to be teens, I want to say. They're, like, I think a couple years older than, like, Lyanna, right? So they're their late teens. That's not a late teen right there. That's why I just can't see that as Bobby B. Whereas these guys kind of do give the vibe of late teens.
So the Baratheons, Starks, and Martells
Anyways.
were mad about this, and the next year things got worse.
Now, I do have a lot of problems, though, with some of the artwork within A Song of Ice and Fire. There's I'm going off on a tangent here because it does bother me a lot. And I think it's also because I think George has admitted to not being that good with numbers and ages and how developed they actually are. But which is why he originally wanted to do a time jump in A Song of Ice and Fire to get them to actually where they probably should be at. But that fell through. But like Cregan Stark at the end of Blood and Fire, when he goes in for the Hour of the Wolf, there's a picture in Fire and Blood, and it has that man looking like a full-ass adult man. Right? He's got a full beard. He looks like he's in his 30s. Cregan Stark at the time was, I think, early 20s. And it does not look like an early 20s man. He looked older than me, and I'm a mid-20s man now. So,
Worse when Rhaegar ran off with Lyanna, and Robert started a war to get her back. King Aerys was killed.
Okay, whoa, sir. That's an oversimplification of how Robert's rebellion started. Robert actually did not start the rebellion because Lyanna was captured. Brandon Stark, Ned's older brother, the first heir to Winterfell, went to King's Landing and was like, yo, where the fuck's Rhaegar? Mad King kidnaps or imprisons Brandon. Then Ned's dad, Rickon, comes down with some Stark boys and was like, hey, give me my son. Mad King imprisons him, and then Rickon's like, fucking combat, whatever. And so then Aerys chooses Fire as his champion. Fire. Brandon chokes himself to death at the sight of his dad burning to death. And then the Mad King tells Jon Arryn, yo, give me the heads of Ned and Bobby B. And then Jon is like, no. And then the rebellion begins.
By Jaime Lannister, Daenerys and Viserys fled east. Elia, Rhaenys, and Aegon were killed by the Mountain and Armory Lodge. Lyanna died giving birth to Jon Snow, and Rhaegar was killed in battle by Robert. The Targaryen dynasty, who had ruled Westeros for hundreds of years, was over. Robert Baratheon became the new king. 15 years later, the first book begins, and it's a mystery exactly what happened with Rhaegar and Lyanna. King Robert says that Rhaegar abducted and raped Lyanna, but in Season 7 we learn that that's a lie, and that Rhaegar and Lyanna were in love. There's this whole thing in the books hinting that Lyanna rode in the Harrenhal tournament in disguise as a mystery knight, and Rhaegar was sent to go find her, which was probably how they met. So they fell in love, secretly got married, and ran away to this tower in Dorne to have sex all day until Rhaegar was forced to the war with Robert, where he died with Lyanna's name on his lips, while Lyanna died in childbirth. It's a tragic love story, but it's also something more complicated, because Rhaegar risked everything with Lyanna. He not only left his wife and children, he started a war that destroyed his family and his kingdom and his life. And the reasons behind this go deep into politics and prophecy and the fate of Westeros. When Rhaegar took Lyanna, he knew he was risking conflict. Like, we're told in the show that the war was built on this lie that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna. But even if people knew the truth that Lyanna loved Rhaegar, they'd still be mad. Because this was not a society that let women choose who they could love. Lyanna was a political tool that the Baratheons and Starks were using to build a marriage alliance. By taking Lyanna, Rhaegar ruined those plans. He also insulted Dorne by rejecting his wife Elia. So Rhaegar had pissed off 3 of the most powerful families in the realm, which is never a good idea, but it was especially dangerous at that time. The political situation was super delicate, because the king, Aerys Targaryen, was insane. By the time of the tourney at Harrenhal, it was well known that Aerys was mad. He was violent and paranoid, obsessed with fire, burning alive people he thought were his enemies. He was a terrible king, and lots of powerful people wanted him gone. Tywin Lannister had beef with Aerys and said he'd prefer Rhaegar as king. It's hinted that the Baratheons, Starks, Arryns, and Tullys were forming an alliance against Aerys. Marrying Lyanna was part of that. And Rhaegar himself was apparently plotting against his father. We're told that the whole tourney of Harrenhal began as
the prince, it is said, had no interest in the tourney as a tourney. His intent was to gather the great lords of the realm together in what amounted to an informal great council, in order to discuss ways and means of dealing with the madness of his father, King Aerys II, possibly by means of a regency or a forced abdication. When this battle's done, I mean to call a council. Changes will be made. I meant to do it long ago, but well, it does no good to speak of roads not taken. Rhaegar Targaryen, Jaime 1, A Feast for Crows. Alright, we're definitely oversimplifying, I feel like, a lot of things here, which is fine. The one thing that I'm getting caught up on that Alt-Shift-X is doing is talking about really the rebellion. Now, it really depends on would Brandon Stark have gone to King's Landing to call out Rhaegar, had Rhaegar, and let's put the fault here entirely on Rhaegar and not on the 16-year-old girl, on the adult man who knows exactly what the fuck he's doing. Is Rhaegar doing this? Would Brandon Stark still go to King's Landing to challenge Rhaegar if Rhaegar had been up front and been, yo, me and your sister are boning consensually, right? So it depends on Brandon's reaction there. If Brandon don't care, if the family's like, oh, okay, it sucks, then the only person that Rhaegar would have to worry about would be Bobby B. But would Bobby B, right? We don't really see any effort. Like, we've not heard that Bobby B does anything once news of Lyanna's abduction reaches him, right? He remains in the Eyrie with Jon Arryn and Ned Stark up until Aerys Targaryen calls for their heads. And so, because of that, that makes me kind of believe that Bobby B didn't really care that much. You know, like, I think it's her death that ends up causing him to make him believe that he loves her. whereas really he just wanted to be uh, brother to Ned Stark in legitimacy or whatever, however, like an actual brother, like not just brother to Ned in name, but brother by marriage. Is what I think Bobby B really was entirely wanting with it. I don't think he actually cared for Lyanna. He just ends up telling himself that he cared for Lyanna as to like try justify his actions and his anger or whatever, or like he's forever upset that he cannot truly call Ned his brother, in the legitimate means of this society, I guess. Or also you can look at it as Bobby B perhaps had romantic feelings for Ned, but knew in this society that he could not pursue Ned in such a way, and so Lyanna was his way of doing that. No clue.
As a plot, so Rhaegar could conspire with the
But anyways, yeah, it's like the rebellion was not started because of, it was partially started because Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna, but it was not really like it was not going to kick off. It would not kick off unless if Brandon did not, essentially if Brandon did not go to King's Landing, and then if Aerys did not further call for the heads of Ned and Bobby B, the war would never have started.
the great houses to force his dad into retirement. So
At least with the information that we have had presented to us thus far in the books.
Rhaegar was playing the political game. He knew how dangerous things were, and he was carefully scheming to work with the houses to peacefully replace the Mad King. Until he suddenly threw that all away by publicly crowning Lyanna, insulting the very families who could have been allies against Aerys. Then by running off with Lyanna, he set off the chain of events causing war. The Starks came angry to King's Landing, the Mad King killed those Starks and demanded the heads of Robert and Ned. That was when the war began, and it didn't seem to have much to do with the lie of an abduction. It was caused by the tension
Okay, he is getting to that, yeah.
between King Aerys and the Great Houses, which Rhaegar not only failed to fix, but made much worse by taking Lyanna. Why did Rhaegar take such a terrible risk at such a dangerous time? To understand why, we need to understand Rhaegar from the very beginning. We're told that Rhaegar was good at everything that he did. He was smart and a great warrior, he played the harp, he was beautiful, he was able, determined, deliberate, dutiful, and single-minded. Jorah calls Rhaegar the last dragon, and says he fought valiantly, nobly, and honorably before he died. Cersei, as a child, had a big crush on Rhaegar and hoped to marry him. John Connington also loves Rhaegar, his silver prince, and Rhaegar was popular with the common people, who cheered him at tournaments. So, on the surface, Rhaegar seems like a golden boy who everyone loved, but Barristan says that no one truly knew Rhaegar. He had a private, secretive side, a melancholy, and a sense of doom, which was related to Rhaegar's birth at Summerhall. Summerhall was a Targaryen palace in the south. Rhaegar's great-grandfather, King Aegon V, brought his family there to celebrate the impending birth of Rhaegar. But Aegon also apparently tried to perform a fiery magic ritual to hatch some dragon eggs, and the fire got out of control and killed King Aegon and much of his family. It was during this tragedy at Summerhall, amongst the flames, that Rhaella Targaryen gave birth to Rhaegar. He was born in grief, and that shadow hung over him all his days. But it wasn't just grief that haunted Rhaegar, it was destiny. The Targaryens have always been guided by visions and prophecy. The reason they survived the Doom and came to Westeros in the first place was because of the vision of Rhaegar's ancestor Daenys the Dreamer. We see Daeron and Daemon Blackfyre having prophetic dreams in Dunk and Egg, and prophecy is the reason why Rhaegar was born.
We do? I gotta reread Dunk and Egg then.
Born. His parents, Aerys and Rhaella, got married because a witch said that the prince that was promised would be born of their line. The prince that was promised, or Azor Ahai, is a hero prophesied to be reborn and save the world from darkness, which seems to mean they'll fight the White Walkers. The prophecy's vague and complex, and people interpret it in different ways. Melisandre, for instance, thinks Stannis Baratheon is Azor Ahai, which doesn't work out, while others think Daenerys is the hero. Rhaegar was also into this prophecy, and it guided him from a very young age. As a boy, Rhaegar wasn't interested in playing with other kids. He just wanted to read books. Until one day, Rhaegar read about Azor Ahai and came to believe that he was the prophesied hero. So young Rhaegar went to the Master-at-Arms and said he needed a sword. "It seems I must be a warrior," he said. He talked about this in letters with his great-granduncle Maester Aemon. Aemon agreed that Rhaegar was Azor Ahai because, according to prophecy, Azor Ahai will be reborn amidst smoke and salt. They thought the smoke was from the fire.
And then, of course, when people consider it to be about uh Daenerys, they point to Dragonstone, which of course it does make a lot of sense. I do believe that Daenerys could be Azor Ahai. I won't be upset if Daenerys is Azor Ahai. I do prefer Jon Snow's. I just prefer Jon Snow. I just really like his character more so than Daenerys. Um, her chat like they Daenerys needs to get out of Essos. That's really the thing that's holding me back on her. Probably from liking her a lot more. Just because Essos feels so unconnected to, or at least where she is in Essos feels unconnected to the wider story. Now, of course, I do believe George probably will find a way to connect it all into the wider story and have us be able to retroactively look back on her time in Essos, not just as a place where her character is built and we get an understanding of who she is as a person, but also I think he will connect the events of Essos into the ultimate final battle against the White Walkers or whatever, um, so that they do feel like important, like there for a reason aside from character building.
That burned Summerhall when Rhaegar was born, and the salt was from the tears that were shed there. So Rhaegar was convinced that he was Azor Ahai, and since Azor Ahai is described as a warrior of fire who will lead the fight against the dark, Rhaegar trained and became a great fighter. From a young age, Rhaegar was willing to shape his life around fulfilling the prophecy of Azor Ahai. But his beliefs about that prophecy later changed. Aemon says Rhaegar came to believe that Azor Ahai was not Rhaegar, but Rhaegar's son, Aegon, the baby he had with Elia, because the prophecy says that Azor Ahai will be born beneath a bleeding star, and Rhaegar and Aemon thought that this star was a comet that was seen the night Aegon was conceived. This connects to a vision that Daenerys has in Book 2. She sees her brother Rhaegar and his wife Elia with their baby Aegon. Rhaegar says Aegon is the prince that was promised, and there must be one more. The dragon has 3 heads. It's not clear how the heads of the dragon relate to the prophecy of Azor Ahai, but the heads do connect to the symbolism of Rhaegar's family, the Targaryens, because their banner shows a dragon with 3 heads, which represents the 3 siblings who led the house 300 years ago, Aegon, Rhaenys, and Visenya. As Daenerys points out, these names connect to the names of Rhaegar's children, Aegon and Rhaenys. So when Rhaegar says there must be one more, it sounds like Rhaegar wants a 3rd child called Visenya to complete the set of the dragon with 3 heads. But there was a problem, because Rhaegar's wife Elia was always frail and sickly, and after giving birth to Aegon, she couldn't bear any more children. So, if Rhaegar believed there must be one more, he'd need another woman to produce his 3rd child. And that is where Lyanna Stark comes in. It seems likely that part of the reason why Rhaegar ran off with Lyanna and fathered Jon Snow was that he wanted a 3rd child to fit the 3 heads of the dragon. If he was planning for a daughter called Visenya to fit Aegon's sisters, that didn't work out, but he might have changed his mind about Aegon and decided that this 3rd child, Jon, would be Azor Ahai, because Rhaegar says that Azor Ahai is connected to something called the Song of Ice and Fire, which happens to be the title of the book series. Lyanna Stark of Winterfell is connected to ice, and Rhaegar of the Targaryen Dragonlords is connected to fire. So a child of Lyanna and Rhaegar would be a song or a son of ice and fire. There are many hints in the books that Jon may be Azor Ahai. Melisandre prays for a glimpse of Azor Ahai, and her god shows her Jon. There's smoke and salt and a bloody star on the scene where Jon dies, and Ned promised to protect Jon, making...
His rebirth makes him... hold up. Yeah, no, I'm totally... That's more support for Jon being Oh man, the hero.
Jon a prince that was literally promised. So Jon, not Aegon or Rhaegar, may be the true hero. It might have been Lyanna who realized this in the end. Maybe she named Jon Aegon in the show. What better name for the prince that was promised? So it seems that
No.
in the end, Rhaegar
His name's not Aegon. If anything, I think it would still be Viserys, because that is the masculine name for of Visenya.
achieved his goal. His actions with Lyanna led to the birth of Jon, who may be the hero who'll save the world. But does that really justify Rhaegar's actions? Couldn't he find a way to father Jon without abandoning his family and causing a war that killed thousands? How could he be certain that taking Lyanna was the only way? Vague prophecy seems like a convenient excuse for Rhaegar to do things that he probably wanted to do anyway, like ignoring difficult political realities, running away from his problems, and shacking up with a teenager. Because remember, Lyanna was just 15 in the books, while Rhaegar was a 20-something-year-old prince. You can imagine his pitch to her, like, hey, I'm married and you're engaged, but if we don't bang, the world will literally end. And did I mention I play the harp? And he takes her away to this tower he calls the Tower of Joy, and they sit around making prophecy babies for like a year. Meanwhile, the world is burning. Are these really the actions of a hero trying to save the world? Or was Rhaegar just a selfish idiot who killed thousands because he was thinking with his dick? There is one theory that ties things together in a way that could justify all of Rhaegar's actions, including the war and the deaths. Because part of the prophecy of Azor Ahai is that the hero will have a burning sword called Lightbringer. In Book 2, we're told a story of how the original sword was forged. Apparently, Azor Ahai tried 3 times. The first sword broke when he tempered it in water. The second sword broke when he tempered it by stabbing the heart of a lion. But the third sword he tempered by stabbing the heart of his beloved wife. She cried with anguish and ecstasy and died, but her strength went into the steel. And that is how the true Lightbringer was forged and the world was saved. Some readers have noticed that this story kind of mirrors the story of Rhaegar. Like Azor Ahai, he tried 3 times to fulfill prophecy. First, he believed that he himself was Azor Ahai, but he ended up dying in the waters of the river Trident. Second, Rhaegar believed that his son Aegon would be Azor Ahai, but Aegon was killed in the war by the men of the Lion of Lannister, Tywin. The third and final time, Rhaegar made a child with his beloved wife, Lyanna. He plunged his sword into her, conceiving...
And that... Oh shit, hold the fuck up. Jon Snow is Lightbringer, while Daenerys is Azor Ahai, who will wield Jon Snow to end the war. Boom.
Jon, and she died in childbirth. So the first sword broke in water is Rhaegar, the second sword broke with a lion is Aegon, and the third sword, the true Lightbringer, forged with the death of a beloved wife, is Jon Snow, the sword in the darkness, the light that brings the dawn. So while...
You're smart. This man's smart.
Jon is the weapon who'll beat the White Walkers. The actual hero Azor Ahai is Rhaegar, dead years before.
I know there's still got to be a twist
the story even starts.
I still think
this theory suggests
I think this makes me believe it could shift it. I think Jon Snow being the metaphorical Lightbringer, and then Daenerys is the one who will wield it. Daenerys being born amidst salt and smoke. She is the hero that will save the world, or usher in, like, she wants to break, the wheel. I think Daenerys and
that
Jon.
Each of these deaths, everything that happened was necessary, predestined to save the world. Lyanna needed to die in childbirth, Aegon needed to die in the war, and Rhaegar needed to die at the Trident. Maybe he knew. Maybe Rhaegar saw this stuff in dreams like his Targaryen ancestors did, and part of him knew that his fate was to die and cause the deaths of everyone he loved. And that's why he could never be happy, never be known or fully love or explain himself to anyone.
I like this take.
That was his melancholy, his sense of doom. Maybe his is the song of ice and fire. And from the beginning, he knew how it ends. That's one theory, anyway. There's still lots that we don't know about Rhaegar's goals, the politics, prophecy, heads of the dragon, and about Lyanna and Elia. Like, how did Elia feel about her husband running off with another woman? Was she in on the prophecy stuff? And how much did Lyanna know? Between Lyanna and Elia and Rhaegar's mother, Rhaella, there are a lot of women in this story whose only role is to be pretty, give birth, then die. We know almost nothing about them, so it'd be nice to learn some more about their stories. What is clear is that Rhaegar and his legacy are tied to the fate of Westeros, and will keep seeing his influence until the end. Alt-Shift-X now has a website.
And that was Rhaegar. Was Jon's father the true hero of Game of Thrones? An answer that we will never probably have, depending on how optimistic you want to be about A Dream of Spring ever releasing. I'm optimistic for Winds of Winter, less so for A Dream of Spring. But this was a great video. I yapped a lot more than I thought I would. I hope you guys enjoyed as well. Remember to hit that like button. Let me know if you want to see me react to more of this. Of course, this has to, be watched by a decent amount of people for me to want to keep doing it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I love A Song of Ice and Fire. It is, I've said this before plenty of times in my other fantasy author videos. It is the series that got me back into reading. It is also the series that really pushed me over the edge to start writing again as well. So even though I don't know, at least as it stands unfinished, I do not rank A Song of Ice and Fire in my top 5 books. None of them in my top 5 yet, as long as they remain unfinished. Because I'm someone that cares about an ending. I want my stories to have good endings. Um, it is still probably one of the most, outside of Tolkien's writing, it is probably the most influential series to me as a writer and probably as a person as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.